speaker. Our next speaker is Payal Kapoor. Payal, for those of you who attended the previous panel discussion, is a disability inclusion evangelist. Having lost her eyesight and partial hearing 28 years ago, Payal is passionate about disability issues and has counselled, trained and mentored hundreds of visually impaired persons in their journey through life. Payal's talk is titled, The Power of Humanity Through My Eyes. Payal, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. We are living in unprecedented times with, a situation that nobody ever anticipated would be part of our lifetime, or that would probably be written off in our children's textbooks in the years to come. We spoke of the Spanish flu and we spoke of the first pandemic and all that stuff, and we never ever thought that we would have gotten here. But well, here we are. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And then what do? When life gives you lemons, you of course make lemonade. Now, whether the lemonade is sour or sweet or just so is something that remains to be seen and experienced by each one of us, drawn by our own experiences. So a little peek into my journey through this pandemic. And, I'm a person with multiple disabilities, the primary caregiver to elderly parents, and I live with them, and we need to take care of a lot of things for them, although they support themselves and various other such things. But there is a lot around here that is entirely my responsibility. And suddenly, out of the blue, all the doors started shutting down. We had a lockdown and, left high and dry with hardly any time to do things. Not just me, I was one person, but I'm also part of a community of disabled people who have larger challenges. I was still sitting secure in my home with a family, with a refrigerator full, with a pantry full and things like that. But I know of people who had left homes to work and things like that and were suddenly shut in their homes, in their flats, in their hostels, and all sorts of places. We've heard many stories of all of that. How did they manage all of that was my thought. My first thought was that, of course, after I had gotten over the initial fear of what was I going to do, how was I going to manage, and if I run out of things as an independent person who moves around, who does her own thing and takes care of her home. I was limited to my house, to my own four walls with my parents, with probably just one person, my sister outside the house, who, when allowed, could come because she was an alternate caregiver and could drop things off and had to go. But there were these bunches of people with different kinds of disabilities, wheelchair users, people with intellectual and mental disabilities, people with senior citizens who were living on their own, and all of that. And what happened suddenly was this need. Suddenly, caregivers gone. I used to look at social media posts and things like that, read articles, and suddenly you'd see somebody saying that I'm stuck in this particular place. I'm used to a caregiver. I cannot manage on my own. I'm a wheelchair user. I'm a paraplegic, and I always need a caregiver to help me in and out of my wheelchair. I need somebody to help me cook. My counters in the kitchen are so high that I can't manage on their own. Something as basic as that, and something as frightening as that when you were stuck indoors. But there is such a sense of community and such a sense of togetherness when adversity strikes. It's amazing. And I think the resilience of the human spirit time and again proves that we are larger than our own selves. We are larger than any circumstance, any evidence of any tragedy that might befall us. So there suddenly, out of the blue, we had these group of activists in Delhi who started working towards getting a government order for the people with disabilities and senior citizens for something as basic as to allow their caregivers to be able to come to them. And believe me when I say within, I think 2 days, I think 22nd was the lockdown. By about 24th of March last year, we had a government order out addressed to all the state high commissioners, police, police commissioners, and so on and so forth, and also issued by the Home Ministry, basically saying that any person living with a disability, any person living with a senior citizen or anything have to be allowed their caregivers. And what happened? Suddenly, there was, of course, a lot of talk about it because people, you know how human nature is. We tend to circumvent things and we want to make things easier for ourselves. So there were people who would misuse it and things. So there were issues with gated communities. There were issues. I had a friend who lived here, and she's a widow with two young children and an aging mother-in-law who has, who needs full-time care. And for her, it was so difficult because her mother-in-law was used to the full-time help. But nobody, the society refused to allow anybody. And no, we can't do this because in case you want someone to come, then in that case, we'll have to allow others. So she was stuck in a position, and I heard about it. And in the meantime, I had managed to lay my hands on the order from the authorities who had started this entire thing. And within minutes, we had this whole thing beginning to circulate from one group to another group to another group, so that people I knew within my circles and people beyond those circles and beyond those circles started receiving this information that it was okay for the society simply had to allow, if anything, the local police station had to intervene and they had to allow a caregiver, one person, to come in over there and help. So I had friends, a blind couples with other kinds of disabilities, with little children who didn't know what to do. Everyone was managing on their own. It's not as if it was dire, but not a life or death situation, fortunately. But which later, of course, with the COVID actually spreading around, did become that way as well. But in the beginning, there was very, very quick dissemination of information and so much help. I saw very avidly trying to follow this entire thing, trying to follow the paths that could, in any way that I could help people. I saw many police stations and who were all out there on social media, on Twitter, and if you sort of wrote out a message and tagged one of your police stations, immediately in Mumbai especially, I saw people responding, the police station responding so quickly and saying, please call us and we'll talk to you and we'll see what you can do. How does this even happen? I mean, in a situation like this, in a world that is so disbelieving of good deeds and of goodness and of kindness, how does this even happen if it's not already part of who we are, part of the core of basic humanity? And apart from that, I mean, my own friends sitting far away from me in different countries, different cities, who had people here, I started receiving messages from them. Are you okay with groceries? Because initially all of that shut down. So are you okay with groceries? Are you okay with vegetables? Are you okay with medication? Can I send something? I have this person and a contact number. Within minutes, I would get a contact number and a name of a person who I could reach out to, who would leave things at my doorstep and go. So this was just one thing. Then around where I am, there were communities, because there was a lot of migrant labor and things. There were communities who started making food and, sending out food to people that were homeless and living around on the roads, waiting to be able to get out and things like that. The silence was deafening because it was so quiet. For me, although I must say it was good because I'm partially deaf and it gets extremely noisy, so I enjoyed the quiet. But in that silence was so much energy. There was so much strength. There was so much love and togetherness. There was a brotherhood that was beyond imagination. At a later time during the pandemic, we ended up being COVID positive ourselves, my elderly parents and I, and it was a very, very scary situation, considering we were sitting home and we didn't go anywhere, but it still walked into our home in ways that we really never know. We had to, my mother has more health issues than any of us do. And she needed to be hospitalized and for oxygen support. One was, I was reading reports and looking for hospitals, and everywhere it said that no beds, no beds, no beds. And out of the blue, there was this one hospital, someone that was known to someone else. I didn't know this person directly, but this person turned up and said that I was told that your mother needs help and whatever, but I can offer her a bed. You don't worry about it. I'll send an ambulance to pick her up. It was just as easy as that. In the toughest situation where, with all the fright, all the worry, all the fear, we had a doctor, a friend on call with us right through, giving us updates on her. We had complete strangers talking to us and telling us things were going to be okay, and that they were watching over her because of the isolation and the fear and the worry that we, were caught in the middle of as a family. And she, with all the trouble that she had, she came back home 4 days later, not really in a very good condition still, but had to be let go because there wasn't much else they could have done for her in the hospital. And let's face it, the beds are precious. They were really, really precious at that point in time. But what happened then? She still needed oxygen support. And guess what? There were no machines available. There was really no machines available. And we started hunting, talking to people and hunting. And suddenly, out of the blue, we got to know about a trust that, gives out medical equipment and things like that. And for no charge. And they said, well, we have a machine that you can take. How long do you need it for? So we said about a week. But of course, it didn't last for a week. It was much, much longer than that. It was longer and it was frightening and whatever. And we called them and we said, but we need it for a little longer. They said, don't worry about it. You take care of what you need to take care of. We'll take care of what else is needed from our end. If someone else needs a machine, we will make sure that we source that machine. And you take care of what you need to. So we asked them, what can we pay you? They said, no, we don't need any money from you. But at any point, if you think someone else needs help, please lead them to us and we will help them. And in the meantime, in case you'd like to make a donation or not, that is entirely up to you. Do we even hear these things under normal circumstances? We hear of so many things out there, and so much, aspersions being cast on even a good deed. Now, if somebody today, under any normal circumstances, to ask you that I want to do something for you, do you want me to help you? What can I do? So your first thought, involuntarily, is I wonder what he wants from me in return. But in this situation here, nobody was asking for anything. They only wanted you to take from them and to be able to spread the very desperately needed hope and, something that everyone could hang on to at that point in time, because it was so difficult and it was so hard on everybody. We started talking to people. We started doing, little networks for other people with disabilities who were alone and stuck in their places without being able to, cook for themselves and things. I started holding webinars and calls and talking to them and telling them how they could manage with whatever they had at home. And since I also run a podcast teaching blind people how to cook accessibly called Rasoi Ke Rahasya. It's on YouTube as well, these audio tutorials. So that was the time that this entire thing even happened. The idea struck, and there were so many people that were left hanging. Somebody who could only use an induction stove, perhaps to warm a cup of tea or to make a cup of tea or to boil some water or boil an egg. And we had to make the best and to ensure that these people didn't endanger themselves by going out. And these people didn't endanger themselves or anybody else who came to them. So in that case, we tried to work and empower them to take care of themselves and to make themselves self-sufficient, to take care of their families, and to take care of whatever basic needs they had before groceries and things could be brought into them. We gave them lessons on first aid. I'm a trained CPR and first aid certified CPR and first aid service providers. So I was talking to them and telling them what they could do with basic medication and what they needed to do to keep their heads up with, little children, with the elderly in their house, in their homes and things like that. What were the basic things? Cross-checking on what was available in their medicine boxes and things like that. So we did all of that, and we came out of it winners. We came out of it so wonderfully strong as a community, as a gathering, as a complete cohesive strength that helped us to move on and see where we are today. The support continues, things are getting better, worse, whatever they might be. But what has happened is that we have built a cohesive community wherein we know who we need to reach out to and how we can get help. Is that possible for me as one person to do? No. Is that possible for any of you there to do as individuals? No, it isn't. It's the strength of humankind. It's the strength and the power of kindness and humanity as a whole that makes me sit here today and talk to you about the brighter side of what was an extremely scary and dismal situation. So I hope that there is something in this for everybody to learn from, just as I did. And the next time someone else needs help, all you need to do is just extend your hand and just add to that gathering and to that growing humanity. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Suresh. Thank you for that talk.
Thanks, Suresh. Thank you.
My first question to you, in your understanding, has the pandemic made us, and the lockdown made us a more kinder society or a more harsher society?
I think we are, it's both ways. There's really no absolutes with anything. It has made us aware. It has made us kinder, yes, because there has been such a lot of loss and suffering. I think everyone, I don't think there is even a single human being that hasn't been touched by this, by some sort of tragedy, by some sort of fear. So yes, we are a kinder generation, but at the same time, we have also learned how to safeguard ourselves. So there is a certain amount of selfishness there as well, that I will take care of myself first. If I have to wear a mask, I will wear mine first and then give you yours. That's also a reality.
Yeah, that in itself may not be a bad thing. Even when you sit in a flight, they tell you, please put your own mask on.
Yeah, correct. Exactly. Yeah, so maybe that's kindness also in its own strange way.
And you can't help anybody else unless you're in a reasonably fit position
Absolutely.
to help somebody else.
That's it.
So,
That's it. Yeah.
Well, the next question to you: what are sort of some of the rules of being kind to oneself? How do you practice kindness upon yourself? You spoke about being kind to other people, looking after your mother, looking after people in your society.
Yeah.
What do you do to be kind to yourself? How do you look after yourself?
Well, for myself, I think what was most important to me was to say it was okay to be upset. It was okay to be sad. It was okay to be worried. And like I think in the talk before, Nandini said that you have to learn to first take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. I sort of just told myself it was okay to be selfish. It was okay to shut down and, tell my family that this is, I need to reboot and I need to sort of get my bearings about me, move away from the stress and just be, whether it meant listening to a book, whether it meant talking to somebody, and whether it meant sharing my worst fears, which I couldn't possibly have shared with my parents, considering they were doing their own bit of worrying. So at that point in time, I think I just took that time off for myself and spoke my heart out, cried if I had to, worried if I had to, and sort of then shook it all off and said, okay, it's time, show time again, and then just went out and did what needed to be done. So, yeah.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about disability now.
Sorry?
Let's talk a little bit about disability.
Yeah, okay. What about it?
And yeah, okay, I'm feeling a little threatened, but I'll try. Okay. That question about how visually impaired people would like to be treated by the regularly sighted, that was from me, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. So let me ask you a little bit about disability. Tell us, what are things, unusual things that challenge you, that don't challenge us? We know of the obvious challenges, right?
Yeah.
Accessing a phone, reading a book, trying to navigate a busy street. What are some of the more unusual and unlikely things that you would like us to know? By us, I mean those who live without disability.
I would think it is, I think empathy is a very, very important, very important aspect. It's usually what we face as people with disabilities, not overtly, but somewhat in an obscure manner, but at the same time, very, very prominently, there are three things I say. There is either there's sympathy, it's a spectrum. It's either sympathy or it's apathy or it's stereotyping. So these are three very, very strong, I would call the pillars that keep us apart from the rest of society, because either they're feeling really sorry for us, which up to a point is all right, because you don't mind somebody, sort of patting your back and saying, it's okay, your life, your life is so miserable, and I understand how you're feeling. You feel good about it in some time, but then ultimately you decide that that's lip service. Just somebody telling you that is not going to make your life better. It's like instant karma. It works for that point in time, and then whoosh, it's gone, because you're back to your own good old existence of everyday living. Then there's apathy, somebody who just, and when I say apathy, it could be unkind, but it could just be ignorance. People just don't want to look at you. I think you should look at us. They just want to, it's almost as if, I've often said that people think disability is contagious. So if I touch you, if I talk to you, gosh, will I also end up getting disabled? There's actually people who treat you like that. Please stop treating us like that. It's not contagious. COVID is contagious, disability is not. So that's a very, very important thing as well, that ignorance is one thing, but apathy is completely something else. And stereotyping, of course, those neat, pretty boxes that people put you up into. And high on a pedestal, you are so inspiring, you're such a wonderful person. Gosh, how do you live your life? I don't know, if I were in your place, what my life would have been like. All very true and very, very understandable. But if you go on, if that goes a wee bit too far, which I see is what happened, they put you on a pedestal, and tomorrow, when you're just being human and having a bad day and throwing a tantrum over something, or just, railing at the world that has been unkind to you for a bad day or a bad whatever moment, you have feet of clay, because you've been up there on the pedestal and suddenly you're not so worthy anymore. So what do? You neatly tie me up in a little bow, in a little package with a pretty sparkling bow, and put me high up somewhere there on a shelf. From where you look at me and you tell me, every time you look at it, you see, when I need inspiration, I look at that Payal box. And that Payal box inspires me. Do I want to touch the Payal box and even see if there's a sound in it? Or if there's something that's broken? No, it's too much to handle. So these are the three things I would think that is necessary for people as a whole, because everyday existence is very similar. I don't do anything different. I'm sitting here in this meeting, in this conversation with you. What is different about it? Absolutely. I'm logged into the same platform. Only thing different is I'm not seeing you, and you're probably giving me some cues because I'm not seeing you. What else am I doing different from any of you? Nothing. So what is the barrier? The barrier is only attitude. The barrier is not technology. The barrier is not anything. It's physical. Yes, it's there. But that's not stopping me from living my life or doing everything or being involved in everything. So I would urge everybody to recognize that, to see us as human beings first. That is why the UNCRPD, the convention which India is also a signatory of, has very clearly said that we are people first. That's why it's persons with disabilities. One might say it's being politically correct, but I think if you think of it just simply, it's a person you're looking at first. But unfortunately, it always works the other way around, because my disability is so all-pervading because of whatever society has said or you have in your head, that me as a person is very hard to separate from my disability.
While you counsel a lot of disabled people in your life, and you've mentored quite a few. So let me ask you a question about the person side of being disabled. Disabled people, just like regularly able people, have a need for a love life, a social life, a sex life, perhaps. What are some of the challenges the people that you mentor, you yourself might have faced in terms of romance, love, sex, all of that?
It's huge. It's huge. Um, I think this is one space which is really nebulous and very lonely. For me as a person, for many others who they're always chasing love, in the romantic sense. We get a lot of love in every other way, but in the romantic sense, we're all chasing love or in some form or the other. We want partners, but now within the community also, what happens? There's this a very clear segregation that it's understood that a person with one disability might want to live with a person with another disability because why? The balance is okay. It works. It's all right. Like a person with blindness can be perfectly paired with a wheelchair user, let's say. She can support him, he can support her, he, she, whatever way it goes. Or then there are two people from the same disability who think that it's fine for them to be together, but to find compatibility over there is different. Why again? Because we live in a society where we as families are very interfering and interrelated in these decisions. So in India, marriage, romance, sex and all is not an individual's decision by and large. It's the family's decision. And everyone decides, whether you can be with that person or not, whether that person is good for you or not, whether you should be marrying that person or not. So it's not simply your decision. So imagine when you put a disability and if you're looking at the cross section of gender and disability, imagine a woman with a disability. She is pretty much, it's expected, like, why are you even thinking of marriage? Why are you even, the family does not, most of them, I won't say most, I think there's always exceptions to every rule. So forgive me if I'm generalizing here, but most often what happens is that families tend to think that it's okay for a woman with disability, for their daughter to sit at home. Oh, why do you need to go anywhere? We're here to take care of you. We'll take care of you. Now, those are parents. They'll take care of you. Yes. After that, you have a brother. All right. Has anybody asked the brother if he wants to be loaded with a sister who's disabled for the rest of his life when he's trying to run his family? No. So there's still no agency over there. And then within disabilities, you have a girl, a man who will say that I'm partially sighted. I don't want a totally blind girl. Or there'll be a blind man with a good job, or a blind woman with a good government job and, well placed in things like that, where her parents will probably say, let's get him a boy who can take care of her. He doesn't essentially have to be rich or well employed or whatever. All that she can take care of. So what are you looking for? You're looking for a caregiver. What about compatibility? That is where the biggest problem is. And that is where most of the transgressions happen. Sex is a totally different story altogether. Well, sex, we're supposed to be asexual. Okay. There's no sex drive. Sorry. Asexual, I'm sorry to the asexuals. That's a totally different thing. But we are also considered, not sexual entities at all. Because what does disability have to do with sexuality? We are supposed to be divine, remember? We are divyang, we are divine. So, where does sexuality come in divinity? So there are all these crazy stereotypes, and it's extremely difficult. I've been married, I've been separated. People with sighted partners don't end up with good relationships. I'm talking about blindness because that's the community I work with most. Yet there are extremely happy couples with, within the community and things like that. So it's a very lonely space to be in. And I've experimented, I've been, separated for 10 years now, and I've experimented with dating apps and things like that. That's a story for another day, but people look at you, of course, accessibility. Let's talk about that. Tinder is the most horrendously inaccessible app. There are others also, which are also very inaccessible for us as screen reader users. So right from the start, we are impaired in some way or the other. So what people see is your disability. They can't look beyond the disability. I mean, they've told me, we have very interesting conversations with you. It's so much fun, but how are you talking to me and how did you decide you wanted to speak with me because you didn't see my picture? as you've just told me, you've had an interesting conversation. What does my seeing a picture have to do? You are the one who looked at me and thought I looked all right to interact with. So it doesn't matter to me. And if you can't have a conversation with me, you could be the best looking man in the world. I don't care. It doesn't matter because I'm not seeing you. So it's very sad because the stereotypes are so huge, and people, then eventually you just say, okay, let's just forget it. Let's not do any of this anymore. Let's just go on with our lives and, just do our own thing. But again, it's not, it is a lonely space at the end of the day. It is. All said and done.
All right. That was a nice, long, and interesting answer, Payal. Thank you for opening our eyes to your world.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I took up too much of your time.
No. I'd love to talk to you for another hour or two. It's fascinating to get a window into your world and how you see the world. And the last part about relationships and dating and Tinder is fascinating for us regularly sighted people, because we take so much for granted about apps and about looking at photographs and about what we do and don't do and what we like and don't like. We never think what it's like for somebody who's visually impaired.
It's universal design is the mantra. It's the way to go. Universal design is the way to go. There are guidelines. I'll be talking about a whole lot of that stuff in my workshop tomorrow. There are guidelines, web accessibility guidelines. All it takes is for someone to be conscious enough, for someone to be aware enough to want to do it. It all begins with the intent and the desire to want to do something. The rest is all simply details, really.
All right. That's a good note to end this session on. Payal Kapoor, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Extraordinary session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.